Hi, and welcome to the Great Charities podcast. And if you're listening to this, I think you're always in for a treat. But according to me, at least, today is a little bit of an extra treat because today we are talking with Compassion in World Farming. That is an animal welfare organization that has been named a standout charity for 3 years in a row by animal charity evaluators. And I'm here with Rachel Dreskin, that is the US executive. Rachel, how are you today?
I am doing very well, Emil. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. I'm personally super excited to learn more about the animal welfare question. So if you would explain what Compassion in World Farming is doing for someone that has never heard of your cause, how would you describe yourself?
So Compassion in World Farming is working to address a lot of the issues that are associated with factory farming and animal agriculture. And simply put, we are working to end factory farming for animals. Factory farming is not only the greatest cause of animal cruelty on the planet, but factory farming also is a leading contributor to the climate crisis. It is also threatening human health. And it is also disproportionately affects people of color and low-income communities. So we are really working to address all of these intersectional issues by recognizing that factory farming is not something sustainable that we can continue with for all of these reasons, and working to end that. And we have, as an organization, really grown and evolved into this role. We are not a new organization. We were founded over 50 years ago, actually, by a British dairy farmer, and really started off as a campaigning animal protection organization, lobbying to get change pushed through legislatively. And we have now recognized that we need to be addressing this problem very holistically. So it's a really exciting point in the organization's history. And one note I'll make about the work that we do in the US is a lot of the work that we do is really focused around enacting corporate change and working with the most powerful people in the food industry, which are the large multinational companies who are really driving the way that the food system looks like. And it's, for us, very important to be working with some of the biggest and most influential bodies and players in this, because we want to make change in the most cost-effective way that leads to systemic change.
Very interesting. So it becomes obvious to me how big this problem is and how many different areas of our lives it affects. So you said that you're going to work with the big players and the big companies. What are you doing? Because I imagine these being these huge monoliths of companies and there can't be anything done to rub them. What can you do as an organization to help this problem?
Yeah, well, we have a whole part of our program in the US and elsewhere throughout the international organization that is really focused on forging relationships and partnerships with these food companies. And it is something that when I joined Compassion a little over 6 years ago in the US, I was so passionate about establishing an organization here that takes this approach, because I felt like this is so needed within the NGO and animal protection world, because I saw there was so much opportunity for us to create change if we're actually sitting down in the room with the food companies and talking through with them what is the business case for making these changes in your supply chain. Importantly, what is the risk to their business if they do not implement these changes? And being able to demonstrate that with them and build up a level of trust with them to a certain degree so that they see us as valuable and credible partners to them, I knew would have tremendous impact. And it has. We have built up relationships with some of the biggest food companies, not only in the US, but across the globe. And food companies, they really now have to work with an outside player. We are past the point where companies can say, we are working completely in a vacuum on developing what we think is best for our company in terms of policies that have to do with animal welfare or any other sustainability related issues. They need the credibility of working with outside experts in this space. So Compassion is occupying that space. And what we can uniquely do once we occupy that space is work with companies, say, okay, let's address what's going on in your supply chain. Are you using cages for all of the laying hens in your supply chain? Are you addressing the welfare of all of the broiler chickens in your supply chain? Are you using gestation crates for pigs? Setting policies to move away from those. And then importantly, working with the companies as they implement those changes through their supply chain. So Compassion not only just says, okay, we're setting a timeline, a deadline for 2025 to be able to phase out all cages, but we actually hold them accountable throughout the process and also support them. We have scientists on our team that help them actually navigate, what does a higher welfare system for a laying hen actually look like? How do you properly manage that system? So there's I saw there was a huge need for an organization like Compassion doing this work, particularly in the States where I operate. And we're stepping in and we're filling that gap.
Wow. I love the approach to be involved by working with industries. I think it can be common I strongly dislike what these people are doing. So I'm standing on the outside, throwing accusations and whatever towards them. And that can't really create change. But if you're inside there, you speak their language of business, and you're saying that it would benefit you to make these changes, then I think you can actually do something. Rachel, I love this. So you talked previously about how factory farming affects different areas of our environment. So you spoke about the climate crisis, and this is something that GREAT will focus all of its donations towards. How is factory farming detrimental to the climate crisis?
Emil, thank you so much for asking this question, because this is so critically important. We are at a point now, and this has been recently illustrated in the most devastating and sobering of ways with the bushfires that are decimating the Australian landscape a few months ago. There are the rampant fires in the Amazon. Something we need to recognize and own is that factory farming is a leading contributor to the climate crisis. Animal agriculture is responsible for almost 15% of greenhouse gas emissions. And separate studies have found that the global transport industry is either at that level or possibly even below the level of that 14.5% that animal agriculture is responsible for. Not only that, but factory farming is responsible for 44% of methane emissions and 53% of nitrous oxide, which are two greenhouse gas emissions that are exponentially more potent than greenhouse gas emissions when it comes to warming the planet. And then if you move outside of those gases, we're also looking at things like the amount of land and the water use that animal agriculture requires, and then looking at things like phosphorus and nitrogen emissions, and all this put together. And we simply cannot solve the global climate crisis without addressing animal agriculture. And this is starting to get some more attention, but I think it's really important for us to also look at this very holistically and say that it's not just beef production that is the problem. Yes, beef production is responsible, they contributes heavily to the methane emissions in other ways, but we also have to look at things like poultry production that requires a huge amount of land, a huge amount of water. And that's not because the land needed for the animals. That's the land that we need to grow the crops that we then feed animals, who then inefficiently convert that grain into an animal product that people consume. And poultry production is also very, very high in nitrogen and phosphorus emissions. And we're already dangerously outside of planetary boundaries in those areas. So we are past the point where we can say, okay, we're going to move from a really, really, really bad and unsustainable form of animal agriculture, like beef production, to what some would argue is a better form, like moving to poultry production. Our climate and the looming crisis, which is here we're facing right now, we need to say, okay, we're going to move from really bad options to good options. We can't go from bad to slightly better. So we need to address the sheer number of animals that are raised and produced. You know, that continues to rise. It's a really depressing thing to say, but 70 billion land animals, countless fish, literally countless fish, because we don't measure them by the animal, we measure them by the ton. But this is a vicious, profit-driven system that is not only harming the animals and harming the people, but is harming the planet as well.
I have a question, because GREAT will focus all of its efforts towards solving the climate crisis as for now. So how efficient would you say ending factory farming is if we look at the only solving the climate crisis question? Right now we are protecting the rainforest with our funds. So how effective would you say factory farming is?
I would say they completely fit together. So a lot of the deforestation that is happening in the rainforest is to clear land, one for animals like beef cattle, but it also is cleared to grow crops raised for animal feed, including for poultry and pig production as well. So they are so interconnected. That I think they need to be addressed in conjunction with one another. And I think there's a lot of increased awareness and attention around the role that other things like deforestation play. And we need to also be saying, yes, and this is animal agriculture's part in that as well. And we're starting to see some glimmers of hope, and that I think is beginning to happen at the Golden Globe Awards, which were, I believe, earlier this week, or on Sunday, actually, of this week. Joaquin Phoenix got up on stage and said that he is so glad that the event, which served a completely plant-based meal for the first time, is recognizing the link between animal agriculture and climate change. So it's starting to happen, but we need to continue to get recognition at the highest levels of that, and need to make sure that, one, we get the attention of prominent multinational groups like the UN, major global food players, recognizing and indicating that this is change needs to happen, but also we need individuals to take action as well. In history, sustained momentum has always come from individual actors.
It definitely sparks a flame of excitement that someone like goes up and starts spreading this message on the Golden Globe, for example. So compassion for world farming. What are you working on right now? And what would be something really good that could happen to your organization in the next year, for example?
Yes. So we're working on a lot of different kinds of things, but they're all really like coming together. So I would say I'm going to wrap it up into three main things. One is looking at animal welfare, continuing with this journey that we have been on, and saying, okay, all of these companies that have made these big commitments to move to cage-free egg supply chains, move to higher welfare broiler chicken supply chains, that we are holding them accountable, which we continue to do every single year, and engage throughout that year deeply with companies to get them to that point. That is one of the most critical things that we are working on right now. All of the success of our movement is really riding on whether companies actually follow through on their commitment. So it's a huge critical thing. It's also getting new commitments from companies to step up who have not created policies that meet where they should be. And then lastly, it is leveraging all of these relationships that we have built up with companies, with the food industry, to get them to start now looking at their protein portfolios overall and assessing how sustainable or unsustainable those protein portfolios are, and starting to measure the impact of their sourcing. So how many animals are in their supply chain, setting targets to reduce the number of animals, also looking at how that also the number of animal reduction targets affect other environmental goals and aspects of their work as well. So heading into the next year, I am really excited to continue that work with companies, building upon the welfare work to start addressing that food system sustainability more holistically. I also am really excited and hopeful that we are going to have increased recognition at the highest levels around that linkage that we've been talking about.
You know for certain that you're speaking the language of big companies when you call it a protein portfolio. I love it. And I really enjoy the idea to go for the biggest company and have this top-down approach. I think that makes so much sense. So imagine now someone listening to this really resonate with what your organization is doing, and they feel like, I want to help out somehow or make some change in my life. What could that average listener do?
That would be amazing. And we have one easy place to go for people who want to get involved, and that is CIWF.com/takeaction. And from there, you can find out how to get action alerts, things that you can do, that you can join in, learn more about the campaigns that we're running. You can download our compassionate food guide, or you can donate to the organization through that link.
All right. I highly encourage you listening to do this. Rachel, this has been a wonderful piece of education in how to tackle big problems that could seem overwhelming, but the way you speak about it, to me, makes it seem possible, and it inspired a feeling of hope in my stomach. So thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Emil. It was truly a pleasure being on.
Thank you.